Watchers in the Fourth Dimension.
I am K9 Mark III.
K9 Mark III.
Black magic witchcraft. It's very romantic, but this is 1981. Affirmative.
We can't meet the doctor.
Hello and welcome back to Watchers in the Fourth Dimension. I'm Anthony.
I'm Diana.
I'm Julie.
And I'm Riley.
Oh, I was expecting a short little quote there, Riley.
No, only for the regular episode.
This is a regular episode. Well, this episode, we're taking a little side trip into Doctor Who's first ever attempt at a spin-off, as we will be discussing K9 and Company, A Girl's Best Friend. But before we get into that, Julie's going to take a quick look at the mail. So, over to you, Julie.
Thanks, Anthony. I will be covering the mail for Warriors Gate. So first and foremost, we have Troy Hunter simply says, "This is my number one Who story of all time, so looking forward to hearing what you folk think. I hope we didn't disappoint."
Yeah, usually we get to hear the responses after they've listened to us, so I hope he hasn't cut us off for good now. I think we were kind and nice to it.
I think so.
All right, Hayden Chubb says, "This is my favorite story of the season and one of my top 3 favorites of Classic Who." I think it might be a lot of people's favorites.
Wow.
"It is a story that needs to be watched more than once because there is so much to see and listen to." I'll disagree. "I love Aldo and voice, and also the fact that Rorvik keeps banging on about his crew being the best there ever was, when it's obvious they are incompetent, of limited intelligence, and lazy."
Ouch.
But not wrong. K9, poor dog. However, though he gets kicked and thrown throughout the whole story, he is the only one who has worked out what is happening from almost the word go. No one takes any notice because it's coming out as gobbledygook. Poor K9. And as to Romana's sudden exit, there is Barrock's line in episode 1, which she misunderstands when he answers, "A shadow of my past and your future," thinking he is referring to the TARDIS crew and not specifically to her. That's an interesting point. But in short, I love this story. I give it 9.5 whacks across the head with a clipboard out of 10. Just give me all of the things. Just be nice to K9. That's all I ask. Kieran James Evans says, "Wonderful visuals and beautiful music. It seems that some people struggle to get Warriors Gate, but I do. Probably my favorite of the season. While there is a bit of weird atmosphere going on between Tom and Lala, generally the performances are great, and Adric is quite fun. I kind of like the muted farewell. Now off you go, Lala, to get divorced from Tom and married to Richard Dawkins." Yes, him. It gets 8.5 out of 10 coin tosses to Doom. P.S. Lol at Riley wanting to push Adric at an airlock.
I do want to say her marriage to Richard Dawkins didn't last either, and she is now married to Nicholas Rawlins. So, yeah, she's on marriage number 3 now. No judgment, though.
You know, sometimes it happens. All right, our friend Alan Seiler says, "After State of Decay not doing as well in the Watcher's eyes as I hoped it would, I'm very pleased that Warriors Gate found favor with you all. I love it when Doctor Who gets weird, and it doesn't happen often enough. There's so much about this story that I love, the odd camera tricks, the I Ching references, and the absolutely beautiful Gundam robots. Somehow, the scenes of people standing around listening to an immobile robot talk aren't dull, partly because the backstory is so interesting. The banquet scenes with the shifting time zones are my favorite moments of the season, and the banquet music is my favorite score of the season. I love the moral and ethical complexity of both the slavers and their captives. All around a wonderful story, definitely a high point of season 18 and the later bigger years. It gets 8 out of 10 Mufasas from me." Yes. All right. Keith Burton says, "I was glad to hear the team enjoyed this serial. It's brimming over with imagination, and there is more than can be contained in 4 short episodes. The novelization is by Stephen Gallagher himself, writing under a pseudonym, and he adds in so much more. I get far more of the Tharl history with the Gundam. There is also a wonderful opening sequence where a Tharl bounty hunter recognizes the ship for what it is, and instead of trying to bring it in, he tries to destroy it as it jumps to warp. That explains the damage and their unexpected stop at the gateway. It's a great book, written as one continuous piece of prose with no chapters, and it adds so much to the story. I'll send Anthony a copy."
I think I have it.
Oh, nice.
Ooh.
I would like to read it. That sounds interesting.
Right? One of these days, we'll finally start that book club. Nick Rutherford says, love the metric, Riley. That image of snooty Romana rushing around East Space, cleaning up kitty litter, really makes me chuckle. Doctor Who, 60s, 70s, and 80s says, great episode, watchers. Really enjoyed this one. But I have to ask how Anthony manages to bite his tongue and not give out spoilers. There was one point, and I won't say what, where I was just screaming, they don't know! They don't know!
Interesting.
I mean, every time. I mean, there's some things you can't get around from a spoiler perspective, but, you know, I don't know everything.
There are some pretty big things you don't know that I'm biting my tongue hard on.
Same.
Of course. All right, our friend Arl Gray says, nice job with a slightly challenging episode, but as you know, a well-crafted and interesting one. I think one point of appeal you didn't mention is that this is the only East-based story which actually mines some weirdness out of being in a different universe, or in this case, on the edge of one, as opposed to the previous two, which could have just as well been set in our own universe. There's nothing about them to imply the Doctor and company are anywhere different than the places they usually visit. That's actually a very good point. Thanks for pointing that one out. By the way, Diana referring to the TARDIS crew as the gang makes me think of this as an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Maybe the gang gets stuck in the void between realities. I'd watch.
I would love to see Rob McElhenney have a guest spot on Doctor Who. That could be fun.
I was thinking more Charlie Day, but sure.
Yeah.
And last but not least, we have Austin G. Patterson, and he says, Diana, I need to know what whiskey you'd pair with Warrior's Gate.
Yes. I don't remember what I recommended.
I think you said, is it Yellow Rose?
Oh, it's probably, I mean, it's always Yellow Rose. If I don't know, I'm going to say Yellow Rose. So Yellow Rose, Outlaw.
And that, my friends, is the mail.
Well, thank you for that, Julie. And as a reminder to our listeners, we really do love getting your feedback, thoughts, comments, and questions. And as you've just heard, we do try to read out as many as possible on the show. So please do get in touch. You can contact us through Facebook and Instagram at Watchers4D, or you can email us at watchers4d@gmail.com. Additionally, we would absolutely love it if you subscribe to the podcast, if you're not doing so already, and if you dropped us a review or rating on your podcast platform of choice. All right, moving behind the scenes on K9 and Company. This little oddity has its genesis from when producer John Nathan Turner decided to drop K9 from Doctor Who, believing that everyone's favourite robotic pooch was excessively jokey and provided an overly convenient plot device which made the Doctor seem effectively invulnerable. Immediately, however, there was a public outcry from the show's fans and some newspapers such as The Sun, and campaigns were started to save K9. This attention gave JNT pause for thought on the dog. While he still believed the character should be removed from Doctor Who, he started considering the development of a spin-off series which would feature the robotic dog. Doctor Who's 19th season was planned to run for 28 episodes, but at around the start of 1981, JNT obtained permission to use the budget for 2 of these episodes to fund a pilot for his proposed spin-off. He announced his intentions in mid-January, by which time John Leeson, the voice of K9, had agreed to participate. Despite K9's popularity, JNT didn't think that the character could carry a show on its own. During the summer of 1980, he had considered bringing a former companion back to Doctor Who and had engaged in discussions about the return of both Sarah Jane Smith and Leela. He now felt that Sarah Jane would be an ideal partner for K9 in the new series. With that, the show gained the working title of Sarah and K9. Glad that didn't stick. At the end of April, Nathan Turner prepared a treatment for the pilot episode under the new title, One Girl and Her Dog. He now imagined that the show would harken back to the fantasy adventure spirit of the 60s classic, The Avengers. It's been a while since we've talked about that on the show. Nathan Turner's proposal saw Sarah retiring from journalism to write cookbooks in Morton Harewood.
That makes no sense.
That's so rude.
Aunt Lavinia left her ward Brendan with Sarah before departing for America. Sarah brought K9 with her to the village, having discovered his crate while preparing to move. During the subsequent investigations into a black magic cult, however, it would transpire that this K9 was actually dispatched as a trap by the Master, who had recently been revived after an absence of several years in the recent serial The Keeper of Traken. Fortunately, Brendan was able to reprogram K9 before he could fulfill his sinister mission. Nathan Turner revised this storyline with help from Doctor Who script editor Anthony Root. The evil K9 concept was dropped, and Sarah was now moving to Morton Harwood to write a novel, having recently lost her newspaper job due to a merger. It was also suggested that she had recently acquired some martial arts skills.
Oh my God.
Because reasons?
Yeah. The title changed again, this time to A Girl's Best Friend. Later in May, the storyline was passed along to Terence Dudley, who was commissioned to script the pilot. Dudley was a veteran screenwriter who had recently completed Four to Doomsday and Black Orchid for Doctor Who's 19th season. In mid-May 1981, Elizabeth Sladen formally agreed to return to the character of Sarah Jane Smith in A Girl's Best Friend. At this point, the plan was for a 90-minute pilot to air at Christmas, which would possibly lead to a season of 6 50-minute episodes in the autumn of 1982. It was intended that Sarah Jane and K9 would appear in each of these episodes, supported by either Brendan or Aunt Lavinia, depending on the requirements of the storyline. JNT wanted to record the pilot during June and July, when Doctor Who's production for its 19th season would be paused to allow Peter Davison to make the second season of his sitcom, Sink or Swim. However, Sladen was not available on these dates due to her commitments to the classic serial Gulliver in Lilliput. This forced the taping of A Girl's Best Friend to be postponed until November. One of the biggest supporters of the spin-off was the BBC head of drama, Sean Sutton. Following his departure during the summer, however, the project then came under the scrutiny of David Reed, the head of series and serials. Reed felt that the narrative did not merit a 90-minute time slot, and he ordered that it be cut to 50 minutes. Meanwhile, the title changed again and it became K9 and Company. This was due to the BBC's insistence that K9 should feature prominently in the name of the programme. A Girl's Best Friend was retained as the title of the pilot episode itself. Around this time, Dudley's relationship with Eric Saywood, who had replaced Root as script editor, became strained due to the number of changes that Saywood was making to A Girl's Best Friend. Dudley finally went over Saywood's head to JNT, a move which further antagonised the new script editor. To compose the theme music for K9 and Company, JNT approached fan Ian Levine. He was also, in addition to being a fan, actually quite a successful record producer, and he had been assisting the production team in an unofficial capacity as an advisor on Doctor Who continuity. Levine and Nathan Turner were both keen to develop a kinetic, American-style theme tune, and this was conveyed to Levine's songwriting partner, Fiacre Trench, who was asked to arrange Levine's composition. Trench worked on a synthesizer with the intention being that the music would then be orchestrated by the BBC Radiophonic Workshop's Peter Howell, who was also handling the episode's incidental music. However, Howell largely retained the synthesized flavor of the demo, much to Levine and Trench's surprise and dismay. The director assigned to A Girl's Best Friend was John Black, who we had previously seen directing season 18's The Keeper of Traken. Joining him behind the scenes, we have Robert Gabriel as production manager, making his first and only contribution to the Whoniverse. As a production manager, he also worked on Tenko, which starred Louise Jameson, EastEnders, which also at one point starred Louise Jameson, and Miss Marple, which at no point starred Louise Jameson, before he would later pivot into directing, and would later be known for work on various soaps. As designer, we have the very first contribution of Malcolm Thornton, who would return once a season from seasons 19 to 21. Outside of the Whoniverse, he also worked on Top of the Pops, Star Cops, and Time Watch. And as costumer, we have the final contribution to the Doctor Who universe of June Hudson, who's worked on the show since season 16 opener, The Reboss Operation. And as already mentioned, for incidental music, we have Peter Howell from the BBC Radiophonic Workshop. The serial was originally given 2 weeks of location filming, only to see that cut in half when the length of the programme was abbreviated. Black's first order of business was to record the opening credits, which JNT envisaged as being in the vein of American action series such as Heart to Heart, featuring a lot of rapid intercutting. The final version was subsequently completed by Bob Cosford of the BBC Graphics Department. Now, as mentioned before, the episode was originally intended to air during Christmas week on Monday, December the 21st. However, much to JNT's disappointment, the air date was delayed by a week to December the 28th at fairly short notice. And to make matters worse, much of the northwest of England was unable to watch the programme due to an outage at the local transmitter. Despite these setbacks, A Girl's Best Friend had a very respectable audience of 8.4 million viewers, which was better than any episode of Doctor Who broadcast during season 18.
Wow.
Even still, it became clear very quickly that K9 and Company would not be taken to a full season. Another of the pilot's chief supporters, BBC One controller of programs Bill Cotton, had recently left his position to be replaced by Alan Hart. Hart was underwhelmed by the notion of a K9 and Company series, and the project was formally abandoned around April 1982. And it would not be until 2007 that we would get a full Sarah Jane TV show. All right, well, next up, we have our short summary.
Can I just comment one thing, which is, how did you have that much background for one episode?
Because it was meant to be a whole show.
My gosh. Ugh.
Before we talk about it, the short summary is in the hands of Riley this episode. So Riley, over to you.
A doctor gives Sarah Jane a Christmas present of K9 Mark III, which is exactly what one would need to prevent a coven of witches in a small English town from ritually sacrificing your aunt's ward, who happens to laugh like a goose. And that's exactly what happened in this pilot. Yep, that's it. Now, what I want to talk about is, with a title like K9 and Company, I imagined the theme would be more in a sitcom style. So, here it goes. Taking care of your aunt who's not there sure ain't easy. But the doctor sent a gift with care to stop George Tracy. K9 and Company is here to take care of me. K9 and Company will be my new family. That's
amazing. Thank you, Riley.
Oh my gosh.
I love it. However, I love the opening theme song.
Yes.
It's
so
amazing.
much.
Well, that's obviously the first thing we have to discuss.
Yeah. It's Devo meets Heart to Heart, basically. If you ever heard the Heart to Heart theme song, it's very much similar.
I loved every second of it. I was anticipating in the backstory about it, setting up for the fact that they wanted it to be a season, that they had spent so much time and money on this intro because knocked it out of the park in terms of outfits. Sarah Jane looks fabulous. Yeah. She looks like she was shooting for a magazine cover in 1981. Mm-hmm. I'm obsessed.
I love the moment that she's just casually drinking wine at the bus stop.
Oh, right. The big white coat with the shoulder pads where she's just casually leaning against the car on a country highway. I'm like, what is this?
Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
What magazine are you shooting for?
Yeah, the montage is great.
I had like two main comments. It was one, amazing. And two, how did she get prettier? Because she's gotten prettier. Oh my goodness.
The styling has been updated and she just works better with that style than that 70s style.
Mm-hmm. I also think she was allowed to be an adult.
Yes.
And she was allowed to dress like an adult. And so it was fashion for, the plus 20-year-olds rather than let's make sure she kind of feels teenagery.
Yeah. And she's also she's the lead, really. Mm-hmm. So she's got to be dressed to be striking and dominant because she is the lead. Mm-hmm. So that might have something else to do with it.
I think so.
But also, I'm really glad they kept all the synth in because that was fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the montage, I went in blind, of course. That opening title sequence, I was a bit excited. I was like, oh, shit. Is this actually going to be like a lot of fun and good? Am I going to get like kind of a Knight Rider kind of thing, action?
Knight Rider was the first thing I thought of.
Yeah. And this came out, actually, I looked it up. I pretty much am certain that this came out before Knight Rider.
I think it
so
did.
Maybe Knight Rider got influenced by it.
Oh.
Just the opening song sequence. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Headcanon David Hasselhoff is a massive K9 and Company fan.
I'm down. I'm for it. Absolutely.
Knight Rider started in 1982, so it was over a year after this. About 18 months. Well, let's talk about the story, and we immediately start with some occult rituals, and I'm just like, yes, sign me up.
Yeah, what is the deal with these small English towns having cults in them? I didn't know that Hot Fuzz was actually educational.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the same energy as the Stones of Blood and the Demons, and name 27 other ones that we've seen in the past.
Especially the fact that it's a Greek goddess that they're obsessing about.
Yeah.
Hecate is not a Celtic or English historical goddess. It's very Greek.
They're definitely giving Hecate a bad name in this.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, wait, that's what they were chanting?
Yeah.
Yes, Hecate.
Oh, shit. It sounded like they were chanting handkerchief, handkerchief, handkerchief.
Headcanon accepted.
Literally, when you said that, I had no idea that's who the goddess or the god was involved in this. I just heard them chanting handkerchief.
Of course, you know, Hecate in the Roman era became Diana, and we have our own Diana, so, you know.
Heck yeah, we do.
I have a weird obsession with Nora Roberts books. So yes, I was like, they usually use Hecate just for the normal, nice people who do this thing, not for the crazy people who decide to kill everybody.
Right.
And then they forgot to mic up the one that had the main mask on. And so it was the main priest or priestess, whoever was behind there, being all like, whoa, but it was all
Exactly. Well, let's talk about meeting Aunt Lavinia at last. She was first mentioned in season 11 in The Time Warrior at Sarah Jane's very first appearance because she was impersonating her aunt, and now we finally meet her. And quite how anyone could have mistaken Sarah Jane for Aunt Lavinia, I don't know.
It's just a name, so if you've never met the person, never saw their picture anywhere, it's why in a lot of things that take place at certain time periods, it's like, yeah, it's really easy to hide who you are because no one knows what you look like.
That is fair.
So there's that. I love every single old lady who's in this. I love them. The men are kind of terrible, but the ladies, I'm here for that energy. Absolutely. 100%.
Get out your tea cozies.
I thought there was something very sapphic about Juno. I don't know, I just got that energy from her, and then it turned out she has a husband, and I was like, well, I was wrong.
Hey, it doesn't mean you're wrong.
Fair.
Fair. It just means she got married in a time where she couldn't marry who she wanted.
Very fair.
Aunt Lavinia.
Juno and Lavinia. I dig it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's this box that we know has K9 in it. Is this contrived? Does this pairing make sense?
No, but it's fine.
I have a hard time answering that because I had just simply forgotten that the Sarah Jane K9 relationship came out from the spinoff.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because I think I technically met K9 first in New Who and Sarah Jane in New Who, but I think they work really well together. And it may be the way that I was presented to them, but I love the pairing.
I disagree.
How dare you?
OMG.
All right, it's a pilot episode. So there's a lot of heavy lifting that needs to be done, a lot of exposition, a lot of setup of the dynamic that we're going to have between our characters. So it's hard for them to really get some depth. But honestly, I felt like they were flat together, especially towards the back half of the serial when I'm thinking, okay, so we've had our meetup, our first meet. We've figured out what the problem is, and now we're going to team up and really attack this problem. And instead of it feeling, I don't know, like an adventure with two personalities bouncing off each other, it literally felt like she was using her cell phone to look up things. She basically treated them like an electronic device without any sort of personality. And that's not necessarily the fault of her. It's just K9 also came across flat. He didn't have anyone to like bounce off of. So yeah, I don't think it worked here. I enjoyed them later in New Who, but not now.
Yeah, I get why this wasn't picked up. Definitely. But I do love K9 and Sarah Jane together, just in general. When I think about the two characters in general, I think they're two that work well together, even if they didn't necessarily work the best here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I would like to know, and I heard Anthony mention it in the behind the scenes, how the aunt and the aunt's ward were going to be continual characters for the show moving forward. Yep. But am I wrong in believing then that every episode of this potential first series that was never made was going to be in the same location?
No. So skipping forward to the end, there's a line in there about there being other covens all over the country.
So they were just going to keep with that?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
man. See, I thought that was a throwaway line.
No,
man,
that was kind of the
work.
tickler of we're going to go sort this problem out.
Then why would you need K9? That makes zero sense.
Mm-hmm.
Zero sense. Okay.
And that's the other issue is that with this pilot, and I know it's difficult because I believe they want to keep it more grounded because they want it to be more action and less sci-fi. But when you have a title sequence like that with that music, and then you're just piddling around a freaking farm and countryside in England, that's not very exciting. You're expecting like technology advancement, lasers and stuff, or crazy devices or evil masterminds. You don't get any of that at all. And so now after what you've mentioned, it sounds like they were just going to keep doing that in different locations in England, which sounds not good.
No.
I think one of the moments that really encapsulates that is when K9 is like, I need a large schematic of the area. And Sarah Jane pulls out a map and just kind of holds it out in front of K9. And I was like, surely there's something else that they could be doing here, because this is bad.
It's like I said, it's like she basically, the relationship with him was that he was her fax machine, her scanner, her printer, her GPS device. I mean, her navigator. That's not very exciting.
I'm glad they fixed that when they bring them back in New Who.
Yeah.
Man, it's such a shame. I didn't hate it as much as you guys, but now you're going to make me hate it.
I mean, I didn't hate it. I just, understand why it wasn't picked up.
Oh, yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's that idea that the reason the new one works so much better is because we have a more tech world.
Yeah.
K9 kind of has to be around places he can plug himself in and read data that the humans can't access. And in a non-tech world, he doesn't have that capability.
Yeah. K9, find this number in the phone book for me. Here it is.
Right.
Exciting.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about some other characters because I want to. Brendan is the worst.
Oh,
I hate him. No, he's an idiot.
Yeah, that's why I like him.
It was just one of those situations where it's just like, I don't like when they put in characters like that. And he was going to be a recurring character. And if they're going around to other covens, I'm like, are you just going to let him get kidnapped over and over and over again so that you can see him in a dress?
Yes.
What are we doing?
I'm so glad you brought that up. Did the costume department not read the script and not realize he was going to be the sacrifice? It's either that or he looked like he was in a sanitation gown and was about to get x-rayed or something.
And if they had continued on, they would have put in that laugh joke in every episode. And that was the worst moment. That laugh was just when she said, "Stop honking."
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
It's
just amazing.
So awful.
Oh, and sorry, it popped in my mind. While we're playfully bashing it, I would like to point out that the mystery that was developed in the first half was literally solved by K9 just hiding and listening. That's it. He was just hiding and listening. That is also not exciting. That is just eavesdropping. There should be some sort of code to decode or a place to go to read a script or something.
Drop some listening devices, something. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just... And also, anyone could have done what K9 did.
And are we all very sad that he didn't shoot anyone in the dick?
Yeah.
Only in the back. A new low by him. He shot someone in the back.
Was so disappointed. So disappointed.
That's why I didn't get picked up to series.
I mean, I think Sarah kicked someone in the dick.
Yeah. I think she may have learned some Venusian Aikido from the Third Doctor. And
with all of her new martial arts skills.
Yeah.
Nutshot. Yeah, I struggled with this.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about Bill Pollock, who immediately comes in and proves that he's a total dick. And he's played by the same guy who played General Grugger in Meglos. So there's that.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then there are the two creepy guys, George and Peter, right? So the dad and the son who are behind Brendan's kidnapping, and they showed up at the beginning.
Well, Peter is just he's just being dragged along.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't want to do this. And they're like, you have to. They could have done a better job of giving a real reason why he had to. Because just them saying, but you have to, doesn't make any sense.
Right.
He did have a pretty sweet jacket.
Yes, I did like the jacket.
Yeah, that was my opinion on him. He had a pretty sweet jacket. That's about it.
End of note.
Yeah.
I also really would have loved a little bit more interaction with the real dog and K9. I think they could have played with that a little bit more.
Yeah.
That was one of the bits throughout it that I did actually like, was them all being spooked by K9, thinking that it was Oh man, the Harbinger of Doom, that was great. The concept that K9 is the Harbinger of Doom. I wish that they had played with that more, because that is an interesting way to do that, to bring that tech and like mysticism, witchcraft into a way that would have made this episode more interesting.
But then equally, he's clearly just a robotic dog. Like,
oh yeah, no, for sure. It makes them look dumb.
Yeah.
It shows how much their belief in the whole thing has overwhelmed their life. And I thought that was a really nice way to contextualize the fact that this cult is just domineering over everything, as they see something in the shape of K9 and they go, oh my gosh, it's Sirius Black.
So I have a couple questions as to the general goal of this cult. Because what is the goal?
I thought it was a Wicker Man situation. Like they needed to make a sacrifice for the harvest.
Yeah.
Am I wrong on that?
That's the read I got as well.
Okay.
Yeah, or just like continuation of everything
status
being
quo.
nice. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it looks so
God.
nice there.
Oh my god, it is Hot Fuzz. The greater good.
I know, I'm telling you.
It would not surprise me if Simon Pegg had watched this.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't surprise me either.
And gone, this is good.
But let's make them actual aliens and have things come out of their heads. Cool. Yeah, there were things that I liked, and because don't get me wrong, I love me a good coven story, but all the points that everyone made it's like, yeah, that's all true, and I feel like I could have liked it if it wasn't K9.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
that's a good point. I think Sarah Jane by herself and bouncing off of all the characters that we had in this, that could have worked. I think that could have worked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I do think that there were strong enough characters around that it wasn't like they completely fell flat. The guys were kind of terrible in the fact that they were just kind of the worst and didn't treat Sarah Jane well, but also they're in the middle of nowhere, England. So in the 80s, I get that. That makes sense, at least.
What I liked about the supporting characters, and I'm going to admit, I'd probably only seen this once before. So I'm not coming into this one with a place where I'm super, super familiar with it like I am some Doctor Who stories. And I didn't really know who was a bad guy and who wasn't. And at one point, I was just assuming everyone except for Sarah and K9 and Brendan were bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely kept me guessing on the supporting characters. I definitely thought that Juno and Howard Baker, once they didn't believe Sarah on there being witches, I was like, oh yeah, they're involved. And oh my God, now they're inviting her to dinner. Something bad's going to happen. Nope, they're not involved at all. It's fine. It's a bluff. So I really like how the story did that.
I agree. I really liked that I did not know who was a part of the coven, and that Sarah Jane, as the story progresses, just becomes a place of like, all of you are crazy witch people.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that, sorry to bring it back to Sarah Jane on her own, what a way a series like that could have worked is that with at the beginning and the end, when things are resolved, if she doesn't necessarily have to have another character there with her to go back and forth and review what has taken place over the episode. They could do it kind of like a Sex and the City thing where they bookend it with her writing a newspaper article and like talking to herself because she's recording in the article the adventures she just had. So, you hear me? BBC, there you go. I got it fixed for you. Give me the series pickup.
Damn it, Riley, you're 40 years too late. Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, it's an interesting little thing, isn't it, as a spin-off? I'm not sure it quite works. Julie, I think I agree with you. Doesn't really need K9 in it.
And that defeats the whole purpose of the whole thing. So, yay? Just have Sarah Jane? I don't know. But yeah, like Diana was mentioning earlier, just with the actual introduction is K9 with Sarah Jane. I didn't realize that that wasn't an original pairing.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously when we were going through our Leela era, and I was like, oh, I was not expecting that. Okay.
Yeah. Sarah Jane left and you were like, where's K9?
Yeah, pretty much.
There was even that moment at the beginning of the episode where she looks at him and is like, what is this? And I was like, do I not remember her like losing her memory at some point? How does she not know who K9 is? And then how do you look at that collar and not go, well, this is from the doctor?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting because from here you see them together in The Five Doctors, which is in a couple of seasons' time. And then it just goes from there when Russell brings her back in Modern Who. K9's with her. Mm-hmm. So they did a good job of kind of taking this and weaving it into the fabric of Doctor Who, even if it's not that great.
Well, there are some good points. I know I've been saying a lot of criticisms, but I have two positive things to say. The first is I have to give a shout out to the cult member at the climax of the episode who picked up the dagger after K9 shot the first cult member and immediately tried to complete the sacrifice. Real commitment there. Really appreciate that. Secondly, I, after seeing this episode, am demanding, Big Finish, you better get me a K9 Sings Christmas Classics album.
Yeah.
Where he can't read the lyrics while he's doing it. Oh, yes. Getting all the words wrong because he can scan a map in 2 seconds, but read English, dear God.
Outstanding.
Yeah, that was a lovely little moment there at the end.
Also, I did imagine while I was watching it and, seeing the style they're going for and the time period, how amazing and hilarious would it have been if this show took off, went on for a couple years, and they could have done a crossover episode with Knight Rider or the A-Team.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Well, that's not something I ever expected to hear. I do also just want to call out, for most of the story, I had the impression that Aunt Lavinia had clearly been kidnapped and locked away by this coven of witches, right? And she turns up in the end, and she is in America exactly where everyone said she was. Like, this whole mystery was not a mystery at all. She really did just go off in the night to go to America. Amazing.
I mean, props to her. Like, let's be her. Just, I do what I want, bitch. And I'm not going to tell anybody.
No, you need to let people know where you're going, especially in a place that's overrun by witches.
To be fair, she did.
That's
it's just
true.
Sarah Jane
No one
did
believed it.
Yeah.
So good. So good. All right. Let's see. Is this one metrics eligible? I don't think it is. We will, however, rate it.
Mm-hmm.
So I get to go first this time. And this isn't great, but it isn't terrible either. It's nice to have Sarah Jane back. It's nice to get a little bit more K9, even if he is a bit useless. I do like what they did with the cast of supporting characters. I was suspicious of everyone. I found Brendan's honking kind of endearing.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did. Because it was so dumb. I was like, oh, poor little guy actually laughs like that. He must get bullied like there's no tomorrow at school. But, the plot, bit basic. Little upset that they decided to malign my girl Hecate. All the Satanism stuff, it's a bit generic. I mean, this isn't anything special. So I will give this 6 out of 10, potentially sapphic lover of Aunt Lavinia. All right, Julie, you're next.
Well, again, I don't think I disliked it as much as everyone. I do get that K9 doesn't really fit in with all the stuff that's going on, but I really enjoyed the theme. I really enjoyed the cast of characters. Yes, the whole Hecate thing. I still enjoy the coven stuff. Let's be honest. There's just something about it. Give me some spooky night scenes, and it's really fun. And random ladders falling for, reasons. So I'm going to be weird and probably give like 6.75.
Wow.
Oh, we don't do that, Julie. You got to give it 6.5 or a 7.
Nope.
Damn it.
And yeah, you're welcome. I'm going to mess up all your metrics, dude.
We're not doing this for regular Doctor Who. We're not starting a precedent here, Julie.
And that would be, I guess, Brendan's and dresses out of 10.
All right, Riley.
Well, it's clear that they were trying to go for the action mystery series like Heart to Heart, which I recommend if you haven't seen it. I don't know if it works here because, as we mentioned, the dynamic between K9 and Sarah Jane is so very flat. Usually in these kinds of series, you need some sort of energy between the two main characters. Oftentimes that is a sexual tension or a romance like Moonlighting, Cheers, X-Files. But it also could be a lot of other things like an antagonistic friendship like Simon and Simon, Or as you can tell, I watched a lot of television in the 80s and 90s. I was raised by television. Anyway, there's nothing like that here between them, at least not in the pilot episode, and it doesn't look like there will be. It feels like Sarah is just using K9 as her laptop computer to look things up and get things done. But I would recommend everyone to watch the opening title sequence. It is wonderful. I'm going to give this one 3 K9 Christmas albums out of 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And then last but very much not least, Diana.
Oh man, we're all over the board today. So I genuinely thought it was okay. I am, as much as I've talked on the show before, how I'm not necessarily like a horror kind of a person, I do get down with some covens. I like a good coven-y montage theme through a story. I don't necessarily think that this one was super strong because it's very pull it out of a hat and use it. It's not very creative, I don't think. And while I did like a lot of the other characters, and I did love Sarah Jane being all strong Nancy Drew amazingness, I do think they wasted K9, which when his name is in the title, it's probably not a strong move. So I am giving this 5 out of 10 chances I would join your coven.
And so that gives us an overall average of 5.19, which means that when compared against season 18, aside from Meglos, we liked this less on average than any other story in season 18.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It does sound right.
Yeah.
Really, Riley? You like this less than Legopolis?
I like this less than
Pause.
Legopolis.
Oh,
Wow. Me too.
Because even with Legopolis, despite a lot of my criticism for it, there were some good character moments. I really didn't feel like there were any.
Not even the honking?
No, not. Are you messing with me?
Look, Brennan, is that the ward's name? Whatever the ward's name is, the ward honker,
Brendan.
the goose. The goose is what everybody thinks Adric is.
That's a very good point.
Oh my God.
Brennan is insufferable.
That's it. You
Adric is a
push me.
kid. Yeah.
You push me. Put me down 2.5, 2.5 frozen wards at train stations out of 10.
Well, that brings our story average down to 5.06 now.
No. We'll keep it at 3. We'll keep it at 3.
Well, at least we can laugh about it. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our episode, and we will be back next time for our next regular episode when we finally kick off the 5th Doctor era with Castrovalva. We've made you wait a little bit. But in the meantime, as always, thank you so very much for listening, and of course, have a good one. You have been listening to Watchers in the Fourth Dimension with Diana Burney, Riley Schreck, Julie Philippak, and myself, Anthony Williams. This episode, Brendan is the Worst, was recorded on Wednesday the 26th of February 2025. If this is your first time listening into the show, all of our previous episodes are available wherever you like to get your podcasts. You can interact with us on Facebook and Instagram at Watchers4D, and you can also email us at watchers4d@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the show, please do subscribe and consider leaving us a review or rating on your favorite podcasting app. All of those things really do help the show. And always remember, stop honking.